tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Folks, hold on a second. Let me put on my mic. Mic time. Good morning, beautiful people in the Cayman Islands and beyond. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I need a take a break thing that covers the entire sign there, the entire window. But thank you guys so much for tuning in this morning. What's going on? You guys are good? Good morning, Tamara from the beautiful Fort Lauderdale. Good morning, Ronika. Hello, Morna. Catherine, good morning, sunshine. Good to go, good to go. Thank you guys so much. Sai. Is that how you pronounce your name, or Say? Let me know. Spell it out for me. Hi, Larry. So we're going to do a bit of a Q&A today to try to get some information on what's happening with the border reopening. So everybody wants to know, how is this going to work? There are those of us who are still hedging on the side of extra cautious and saying, listen, don't reopen, don't reopen. Good morning to Jake, Olivia. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Jake wants to know how he can leave the rock. Not so quick, Jake. Pump your brakes. Good morning, Corinne. Yes, today is hump day, halfway through the week. It is Wednesday. Hi, Emily. Who else we got here? We got Paul. Thank you, Paul. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. Sophia. Hello, Sophia. How are you? All right, folks, let's get it. Let's get it. So this is a special segment of the Cold Hard Truth called Seek Out Sandy. It's basically a Q&A. So you get to ask questions and hopefully we'll answer them. If we don't know the answer, we're going to jot them down and then we will get you some answers. How about that? So Marcia, good morning to you, my dear. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Who else has got some morning greetings and shout out for me? Let's get it. Let's get it. I'm just trying to see who else is here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So listen, we're edging a little bit closer to reopening our borders. And remember, we were supposed to do it September the 1st. And then the US, Jamaica, everywhere around the world, pretty much, but most particular for us, US and Jamaica, still don't have their numbers under control. And they still don't have their numbers under control, to be honest. But our government has said at some point we have to consider reopening and we're going to give it our best shot. So good morning, beautiful Alma. Hello, Dean Shillette. Dean finally made it home after being stranded overseas for months. Let me tell you something. There is no place like home. So yes, when you get stranded overseas, that's kind of when you appreciate how precious home is, right? So I totally get you there, Sai. Is it Sai? I'm going to go with that pronunciation. Yes, no place like home, believe me. There was a time when I used to travel a lot. And sometimes you take a trip for like a week or so. And when you came back, you were like, oh, as soon as you got off of Cayman Airways, you wanted to kiss the ground. You know, it was just one of those things where it was so good to be home. But we can't really take any chances with this situation. Well, we're going to take some degree of risk, but we need to mitigate the risk as much as possible. So we postponed the opening until October the 1st. And we have some people coming in on Thursday that we're going to do a test run with, if you will. So what we know is that the Cayman Islands government, Sai is saying, I miss my beach, the good, my family. And that says so true, absolutely true. So government first had this bio button, right? And the bio button was going to track all of your medical information. And then they were talking about it might have had the potential to be geo-tracked. Wasn't really sure if that was actually included in the bio button or if that was supposed to be a secondary device. So they purchased a few of those. We don't know why they're not using that again, but we do know that there has been a change going from the original 5 days that was being proposed, because remember they said it was going to be 5 days in quarantine, and they recognized that that still posed too much of a risk. So instead of 5 days, we're going to stick with the accepted 14 days of quarantine. And so what that now means is that people will be allowed. So we're going from mandatory quarantining in a government owned, not owned, government owned, but government managed quarantine facility to self quarantine, self isolation. And the idea is to reduce the 300 plus people that they have in the government facility to still be that facility will still be available for people who, unfortunately, for whatever reason, are unable to self quarantine. And there could still be some reasons why that might be the case. I mean, let's think about it. You might really need to come home and your environment is not conducive to self quarantining. So they may say to you, yes, you can come home, but you cannot, unfortunately, come home and be quarantined at your home. Now, my sources have told me that yes, there will be, without a doubt, individuals who do not qualify. Because remember, now you actually have to pre-apply for the ability to come back in. So we're not opening for commercial flights. I want to make this really, really clear. So Jake, I'm sorry, you can't really go to Miami, take a trip, and then come back to the Cayman Islands. If you are leaving, and I think this is super important, if you are leaving, that means that you are leaving with the intentions of staying wherever you're going for a long time. Or if you can leave, which I don't know if this would be permitted, because again, you've got to get permission to come back, you would be leaving with the understanding that when you come back, you've got to go into a quarantine situation. So I think really people need to still think of us in repatriation mode. It's just that we're allowing a broader group of individuals to come into the Cayman Islands. But this isn't really a situation where, right, you go out, take a vacation for a couple of days, and then you come back in. So someone was saying to me recently that they wanted to travel to like Paris or something. I'm like, okay. And then they wanted to come back. And I thought, I don't quite think that that's how this is going to work. So Cayman Airways and the BA flights are what's going to kind of be coming and going. And say, for example, you live in Miami and you have certain business here in the Cayman Islands. So there are certain categories of individuals. So I'm just trying to find this email from the press conference so that we can go over the details and the logistics of how they had it worded, because there was also something in the wording that was a bit unusual and people were like, what does that mean? And I was even confused. So I have to admit that I did have to ask the question as well. So just give me 1 second. Let me see. Oh, where's my tissue? My sinuses. Whew. All right. Let me just see if I can find this email from government. Okay. Where are we now? So if you own property in the Cayman Islands, that would be one category of individuals. That would be Um, hmm. That would be one of the categories that could potentially allow you to come in. So just remember, please, that it's always subject to approval from travel time. So how it's actually going to work is they are going to, here's the email I'm looking for. You're going to do a pre-approval, so you'll apply. Now, I've actually spoken to someone in government, and they're still working out some of the rules and procedures and how you will re-enter. So they actually haven't officially released anything in relation to that as yet. Don't know when that's going to happen, but they're going to provide some guidance then, if you will. But generally speaking, anyone who has a home here, work permit holders, if you have, I'm going to tell you how it was worded, why it was a little bit confusing to some people, right? So it said, during the month of September, there will be no change in the current arrangements for approved travel to the Cayman Islands, except for trial. Some aspects of the new arrangements that they have planned for October the 1st, opening of the borders, and that's going to happen now with pre-selected participants coming in tomorrow on the BA flight. Okay, so the phase reopening commences on October the 1st and only pertains to air travel on Cayman Airways repatriation flights or the BA Air Bridge flights now coming between London and Grand Cayman. So our ports will remain closed to cruise ships for the remainder of the year. And basically, no commercial flights are coming in. That's not what this is. So this is why I'm skeptical, Jake, as to whether or not you would even be permitted. Well, I'm not skeptical. I know that you would not be permitted to leave just to go to Miami and then come back, because that's not a repatriation situation, right? So good morning, Miss Liz. Good morning, Gina. Get your questions ready. Good morning, Louis. Thank you so much for tuning in. So when you apply to come back in, they will be making a determination based on what you've said in your application and whether or not you fall into certain categories. Okay? So what sort of information are they seeking from you? Well, one of the things that they want to know is, where are you going to be living? Because remember, now you're going to be self-quarantining. One of the questions that we got is, if someone is self-quarantining, what happens if they have people at home? Well, the short answer is everyone will be self-quarantining with them in that household. So I need to make this very clear, because I think some people are under the impression that people can come and self-quarantine in their homes and they can still have family members going to the grocery store, going to the bank for them, running their errands. And the short answer is no, that's not going to be permitted. That's not how self-quarantining will work. Your entire household has to be prepared to self-quarantine. So those would be some of the questions on the pre-application, or on the application really, that they are going to be asking you. So you've got to make sure, because government will actually be doing an inspection of your property. So you can't lie to them and say, well, you can lie, but once they go and do the inspection and they see that others are living there, and they're not in a position to self-quarantine with you, then you're going to have a problem. All right, so let's go back to the category of individuals. And then we're going to look a little bit more at the process. So for the month of September, we got some processes here. So the trial period is tomorrow. Let me just see. Okay. So it looks like all right. So let me just back up. So for September, right? Not much changes. You have to register with travel time, complete the online application form in order to apply for pre-travel authorization or approval. If you do not complete this process, you will not be allowed to board, and they're still calling them repatriation flights for a reason. So don't get your hopes up that it's time to travel and come back to the Cayman Islands, because listen, COVID, as the director of the Pan American Health Organization said on the 2nd, I think, was a press conference that they had where she was talking about how, unfortunately for TCI, their situation is completely out of control. They thought that they had it under control, and TCI has a smaller population than we do. And it's a lesson learned to demonstrate that no matter how small you are, there is a chance that you can have this virus run amok and take a toll on your community. And I thought that was a stark reminder that, hey, we better be careful, right? So they're still considered repatriation flights, but here's how it's going to work. On arrival in Cayman, you go right now. So we're still halfway through September. Into the quarantine facility, government managed isolation centers, what they're called, for 14 days. You get a PCR test that's conducted on day 15 that you're here. Test results right now are taking between 24 and 72 hours. If you get a positive test result, then you can leave. Now, of course, no one knows how this person last week managed to have a positive test and was permitted to leave, and then they had to pull them back into the facility. Somebody made a big boo-boo. Now, we're hopeful that these boo-boos are not common. Because listen, we are dealing with human beings, and people will make mistakes and make errors. But these are the kind of mistakes and the kind of errors that will cost people their health and potentially their lives and put us all back into lockdown. So we do not want that to happen, folks. Let's be real. So a degree of sensibility is required here. And when it comes now to the arrival procedures, so they're going to use this electronic monitoring device. So this is going to be the new arrival procedure. So October the 1st, we're going to have our borders opening in phases. Now, everyone has tried the phases thing, so that's nothing unique to the Cayman Islands. Unfortunately, nowhere else has it worked. So we are really banking on the fact that this electronic monitor is going to allow us to do this safely. They mentioned the US and Jamaica, of course, of having really increasing numbers. And that is why we have now changed from considering a 5-day isolation period, which made no sense to me anyway. I don't know whose brilliant idea that was, back to the accepted 14 days isolation. So you get this monitoring device. I'm going to show you guys kind of what it looks like. It looks like one of the hospital bands. You know, when you go to the hospital and you get a little band, like you check in, this is exactly what it looks like. So it's not a big time device. I'm hoping we get these at a really good price. I've done some research on this device, and apparently a couple people have tried them, such as Hong Kong. I'm trying to remember who else is trying them. But there have been a couple countries that have tried them. The strange thing about it is I've read about people trying them, but nowhere did I read that like what their success has been, in other words, right? So we know people are using it. Fine. It's called the I Am Smart device. Let me just see if I can get, so it's a geo-tracking device, and this is how it works. It pairs with your mobile phone through the Bluetooth. So here's the other thing. What are they going to do with you if you don't have a smartphone? Well, sounds like you might be out of luck, because then you can't wear this device. So there has to be a degree of connectivity between you and the phone, right, via Bluetooth. I'm going to pull up a little diagram here that demonstrated how it will be connected. Let me just see here if I can find it. And once you have that connection, there is software on the government side that allows them to be able to monitor your movements outside of a particular zone. So you've gotten approval, and let me be very clear. There will be some of you who will apply, who will not get approval because of where you live. Now, I'm not trying to, I'm going to tell you the hard, cold truth. So let's not sugarcoat it, folks. I was going to try to gently say this, but I don't think that there's any way to gently say this, because this is exactly what's going to happen. If you live in a facility that compromises your ability to come in contact with people, so say, for example, you live in a tenement yard. And for those of you who don't know what a tenement yard is, it's like very close quarters, maybe a share facility. So there are workers here who might rent a room in a house. And lots of people have converted their homes into like these tenement yards where you've got, even one single structure might house 10 people. And each person technically has their own room, but a lot of times they have shared accommodations, shared bathrooms, and so on. If you live in a situation like that, unfortunately, you would not get approval to go back into your home. Even remember that housing, that apartment structure in town by School Road that the hazmat guys had to go in fully suited because early on, someone was permitted to quarantine, and that person might have had an apartment that they could quarantine in, but again, because it's close quarters, whatever, they were just out and about, walking around with people. So I think the bottom line is this tracking device has to geo-track your location. And if it's a type of place where it can't really like put your geo fence, it can't fence you in because of how the structure is. So if you're in an apartment complex and the geo fence covers the entire apartment complex, you could see where that would present an issue, right? Because if I go upstairs to my neighbor, the geo-tracking device isn't going to know that. So I don't know that it can necessarily geo-track you to like a specific room. That's not how this is going to work. And that is why certain housing structures will not be approved for the purposes of this. You would have to go into the mandatory government facility. And of course, if you're coming in on a work permit, etc., you're going to be forking up about $3,000 for the pleasure of staying at one of those facilities. So keep that in mind, folks. So here's a diagram of how it's going to work. And essentially, you see the device here on the left. Tamper-proof, they say. Well, I'm sure Caymanians will put that to the test. Because boy, can I tell you, we always seem to find a way to tamper with these things. It's like, remember the man who got shot and killed back in, when was that? 2010? July of 2010? He was supposed to be in house arrest, wearing an ankle bracelet, and instead, he managed to detach himself from the ankle monitor or somehow interfere with the signal. I can't remember which one it was now. I don't think he actually took it off, but somehow he interfered with it, sending a signal back to the reporting center. And he was out and about doing the most, including robbing people. So he went into this elderly man's house in Georgetown. His name is Harrington Rivers. He was only 29 years old. And he was shot and killed. And when he was shot and killed, everybody was like, how did this happen? This dude is supposed to be on bail with an ankle monitor. Well, that's why when they say something is tamper proof, there are those of us who will raise our eyebrows and say, is it really tamper proof for Caymanians? We shall see. All right, so they claim that it's tamper proof and it has this T-Link, BLESOC, and firmware. All those are big fancy words. All that means is it has some Bluetooth technology in it. They're waterproof, tamper-proof, so you shower, you do everything with them. So you're never supposed to take this wristband off. Now, a little bit about this company, by the way. It's called I Am Safe, and this is how it works. This company was actually purchased. So this is a company called the I Am Safe, or the disposable wristbands, but it's part of a suite of what they call Trace Safe pandemic management solutions. Okay, and they're all part of a self-quarantining monitoring system. So these electronic wristbands enable individuals, this is the theory or how it works, to isolate in their own homes while ensuring the public doesn't come in contact with them, and they're still able to, return home and self-isolate. So you need a smartphone. That's the first thing. So if you don't have a smartphone, well, I guess you won't be getting approval. So I'm assuming one of the questions on that pre-approval questionnaire is, do you have a smartphone? And if you don't, sorry, you can't come and stay at home. You can go to the government facility. So they're just trying to shift the balance of how many people, because right now, the rule is you're in the government facility. The exception is certain individuals in very rare situations, more likely people who need medical help or medical assistance, have been granted permission to self-quarantine at home under very strict guidelines and procedures. So they want to flip that around so that the vast majority of people coming back in as of October the 1st will be self-quarantining. And then the exception, so the rule is self-quarantining at home, and the exception will be putting people up at the government managed quarantine facility, right? So you need a smartphone. You need a house that is a property that is conducive to you quarantining without any issues. So they will pick you up from the airport, from the Owen Roberts International Airport. They have said that they will do an initial test at the airport, right? They're calling it first phase of the border opening plans. Again, the pilot program starts tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Inbound travelers receive your pre-authorization from travel time. They're going to put in a team of individuals, by the way, who will be monitoring the system, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Who's eligible? Well, for October the 1st, here we go. So it's not just Caymanians, people residency in terms of status. Now it is permanent residents and work permit holders and their families, to include persons who own property in the Cayman Islands, as well as persons looking to live and work from here for an extended period of time and other approved visitors. Now, I was a little bit confused when they said persons looking to live and work from here. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? Is that individuals who are coming in looking for work? Because that's not supposed to be allowed at all. So what I have been told is that no, this is actually persons who will not be, that will be working remotely from the Cayman Islands. In other words, they have businesses elsewhere. They don't require a work permit in the Cayman Islands, but they do come and stay on island, and they can just go into their computer and remotely run their businesses or work or whatever. So they will be able to come in. Of course, if you're in that category, you have to explain to immigration, and they may ask you for some measure of proof that that is actually what it is that you're going to be doing. Okay, so residential homes that have to be approved by the medical officer of health. So they will do inspections, is what I'm told, of your property before approving your application. So you've got to say, I'm going to be staying at 155 Duck Lane in West Bay. And then they'll say, okay, we're going to go to 155 Duck Lane in West Bay and see exactly where that's at. Check out the facility. Make sure, I don't know how they're going to confirm that it's your property, but I guess they will do all of those things. And then when you actually come in, you can't have, I'm going to have my boyfriend pick me up and take me to my isolation facility. That's not how that's going to work. Government will deal with your transportation. So they will transport you in a similar fashion as if you had been transported to a government facility. Disinfecting the transport buses or whatever, you have to put on a suit, disinfecting your luggage. So there are precautions there that will be taken to ensure the safety of the people who are also handling you and dealing with you at the airport. Because remember, those individuals now become very high risk. How high is the risk? And we're going to go back to talking about the tag here in a second. The risk is extremely high. Let me give you an example. So when I was doing my research on this device, one of the things that I came across that was very, very interesting is there was a woman who, I think this was in Hong Kong. She had the option of using this device and self-quarantining and so forth. So when she got to the airport, they had them put on the hazmat travel suits to get on the transportation vehicle. So same thing is going to happen here. And for some reason, she decided at the last minute, she'd gotten her pre-approval for her house, and she decided at the last minute to change her plans. Now, I don't think that in Cayman, that is going to be allowed. Like, there will be no last minute decisions in terms of, oh, I'm just going to decide I'm going to go into the hotel quarantine facility. And the reason for that is they need to know in advance how many people will be at that facility. So she said, all right, she changed her mind. She went to the facility. She does her whole quarantine bit. And lo and behold, when it comes to testing her, she tests positive. And she's like, what? How did I test positive? Well, the lady who was next to her on the flight was COVID positive. And this is where the danger still lies, folks. And they went into, I don't even know, to be honest, I don't think she was necessarily sitting next to her on the flight, but she suspects that when they were in like the room where they were putting on the hazmat suits and getting all suited up and whatever, that she may have touched something that this woman touched. But let us be very clear, folks. You don't actually have to touch anything, because we know that this virus, these particles, these fine particles remain in the air. They are airborne droplets. So that is why you have got to wear your mask. And even then, there is the possibility that you will still catch this. You just need to be in close enough proximity with someone who has it. So she tested positive, and she's like, wow. She's really quite happy that in the end, for whatever reason, her mind told her to go to the hotel, and she made that decision. And lo and behold, it was in her best interest. Now look at what we're looking at here. Smartphone pairs with the BLE protocol. So this BLE protocol thing, this is just Bluetooth. All right. So they want to get all fancy and technical with us. But BLE stands for Bluetooth Low Energy. And it's a little bit different from what we would call classic Bluetooth. So it's a little bit of a newer Bluetooth technology. And it is considered a wireless personal area network technology. So I feel like we've just moved into Tech Thursday early on. But the thing that you need to know is it is designed and marketed by a group to be used with applications for the purposes of healthcare, fitness, and beacon applications. So like locators, security, and the home entertainment industry. So the traditional Bluetooth technology, this BLE, is separate than that on your devices, right? So you've got, think of traditional Bluetooth. This is a newer, different type of Bluetooth that is designed specifically to allow things like this to work, these devices. So whether it's like fitness trackers, people use things like the Fitbit and all these other devices, they're moving towards using this BLE technology. And that's why they say they're using T-Link, because that's now a brand name, BLE, SoC, and firmware. So it has the capacity built into that already. So it's actually been around for a little while, but they're starting to use it more and more now as these types of devices come into play. What are some of the benefits of the BLE, the Bluetooth Low Energy? Well, one of the reasons why it has low energy in the name is because compared to classic Bluetooth, the low energy version uses less energy. I mean, that sounds kind of silly, but yes. Reduces power consumption and cost. So all iOS devices, Android, Windows phones, BlackBerry, they already support this Bluetooth Low Energy. So the bottom line is all you need is a smartphone and you are good to go. Okay? So it gets a little bit technical. about dual mode, sharing a single antenna, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to know all that, folks. It works on smartphones. So they pair connect, in other words, the wristband with your smartphone, and then that will communicate, send the information with the third-party cloud software. And then the little computers here on the right-hand side delivers alerts and reports to central monitoring system. So government will have a system, the monitoring center set up, where people are going to be sitting down, monitoring and watching the reports or alerts that are coming in from the device. So the theory is, folks, if you are out and about with this device and you're supposed to be at home, it is going to alert authorities of your location. If you leave, a big bling, 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 Sandra Hill has left her house, go get her. In addition to that, they're also going to be doing random spot checks at your house. So they're going to do a drive-by. Now, I don't know in theory how this drive-by is going to work. Are they going to come knock on your door and make sure that you're there? Because the idea, remember, behind this is nobody in and nobody out. So when you're self-quarantining, you can't have people coming over. And this is where I think the weakest link of this system is going to be very apparent. Because yes, I can self-quarantine, get my house approved, get my facility approved, be at home, fine. What about people coming in? How are you going to stop that? Because this little wristband isn't going to tell government if I have people in and outside of my house, not at all. So how will this work? The neighbor comes over for a midnight booty call. All right, you're tumbling and rolling in the sheets. They get up and they leave. You know what we need? I'm going to tell you a joke about this smart technology. There was a woman, and then I'm going to get to some of your questions. I do need to take a quick commercial break though, but there was a woman who had one of these Fitbit devices, right? And so her boyfriend had said to her that he was going to go home and sleep and whatever. She's like, okay, cool. But he had left his phone or something that was connected to the Fitbit at her place. And all of a sudden, like 3 o'clock in the morning, no, it wasn't that he'd left his phone. They had decided, because they were like, if you ever had a Fitbit before, you can like do competitions and stuff with people, right? So other Fitbit users, you can say, okay, let's do the step competition. You invite other users into that competition. How many people can get to 10,000 steps first, or who does the most steps for the day, or whatever. And apparently some of them allow you to link your phone. So he had somehow linked his phone, her phone, with his device, because they would like work out together and whatever, right? So at 3 o'clock in the morning, she gets an alert on her phone that the boyfriend's heart rate is like speeding and going sky high. So she's like, what would my boyfriend be doing at 3 o'clock in the morning that would be having his heart rate go up like this? So what kind of physical activity is that? So lo and behold, I think she ended up questioning him about this 3 o'clock in the morning spike in your heart rate. And guess what? He was actually cheating on her. And so the Fitbit caught a cheater, folks. Isn't that crazy? All right. Give me one quick second. I'm going to get to some of your questions, but I do need to grab my tissue and I don't see it. It's normally right here at my desk and I do not see it. So I will be right back after these messages.
Miracle Brokers International is a shipping, moving, and logistics company. You get all our expertise in one stop. Our motto is shop, ship, and save. All shipments are important to MBI, and we'll track your items during shipment, clear through customs on arrival, and deliver to your door. MBI will spend the time in lines to get your cargo for you so you can be more productive with your time. Miracle Brokers, the solution broker. 345-925-5989 or miraclebrokers.com.
All right, folks, thank you so much. So yes, let's have a look at some of your questions. Now, someone had sent through a question via the website that said, I wonder if this is the device Jamaica is using. I understand persons leave the smartphone at home and go about their business and still spread the virus. So I've not heard of Jamaica being one of the countries that's using this particular device. However, I'm not quite sure how that works, because if your phone, and like I said, I don't know what device Jamaica's using, right? If you leave your phone at home, your phone has to be within a certain range in order to connect with the Bluetooth. And we all know this, right? So you get in your car. If you have a newer car, it is Bluetooth connected. Okay. You know that when you're in your car, that it finds the Bluetooth. If you get out of your car, it disconnects from the Bluetooth. So Bluetooth has a certain range, just like Wi-Fi. So if you left the phone at home, but the wristband is still in your hand, it would lose the connection with the Bluetooth device. And that would be one of the alerts that the monitoring center would receive to say, hold on a second. For whatever reason, this device has lost communication with the wristband. And that would prompt an alarm that would be very concerning. Why has it lost communication? One of the ways, obviously, that it can lose communication is if an individual is no longer physically in that same zone. So the government will have inspectors, and the people who are inspecting the house are health trained inspectors. So they're looking for certain things for the pre-approval process. And then they will have other individuals who are going around doing spot checks. And of course, if for some reason your device says that you're no longer connected to the Bluetooth, if they get that sort of an alert, presumably they will be out in a short space of time to check on you to see why that alert is coming through and what is happening at your physical location. So Louis, good morning. Says that he wants to come from the US. Yes, just the whole airplane thing is where I'm out. Yeah, so I mean, there is definitely a degree of risk in any travel right now. Airports, airplanes, you know. So they will, I'm assume, as they've done before, not allow any incoming flights to be full to capacity. So Cayman Airways will only be selling so many flights on each of these scheduled arrivals, right? So space in between each person. My concern was for the Cayman Airways employees who are on the flight, and I have been assured that their risk has been mitigated by the fact that there'll be no in-service service. So no in-flight service, sorry. So you're not getting a drink. So make sure when you're coming in, you know that. You can't ring the bell and ask for anything. So they're there because FAA regulations require certain amount of stewardesses, flight attendants, in the case of an emergency. So it can't just be the pilots, obviously. So they're there for certain things, but they will have no interaction with you. So they will be wearing their mask and gloves and whatever else to protect themselves. And they will also not be walking up and down the aisles or interacting with people in any way. So they will try to maintain a very safe distance from people as much as is possible on a flight. So Wayne wants to know, so don't forget, pan up your Q&As. Wayne wants to know, what about testing upon arrival? And if negative, allow people to move around freely. Well, the reason that that cannot work, Wayne, is very simple, and it's a matter of understanding how COVID works. The reason why the 14 days has been set as the international standard for COVID is because you can have the virus at any point before that and not get a positive test because you don't have enough of the viral load to get a positive test. But that does not mean that you do not have enough of it in your system, that you do not have enough of it in your system to spread it. And I know we've broken this down before, but let's do it again. Here's an example. I'm traveling from Miami, right? I get the virus at the airport. No, say I get it 2 days before traveling. And this is why pre-tests are still dangerous, because the PCR test only measures it in real time. Do you have the virus right now? And not really do you have the virus right now, do you have enough of the viral load to show up positive on a PCR test? So say I was exposed to the virus 2 days ago. I went to the grocery store, got my snacks, went to the pharmacy, got my prescription in Miami because now I know I'm coming back to the Cayman Islands. I need my meds, I need this and that, whatever, right? So I was exposed to the virus and I travel within 48 hours to the Cayman Islands. They do a PCR test at the airport. That test is negative, but I have the virus. So your load has to be at a certain level in order for that test to come back positive. So just because it's testing negative at that point in time does not mean that you do not have it. So the only way that we can come closer to that 97% sure that you don't have it, because even the 14 days is not 100%, but we get into the 90 something percentile where we're pretty close. And this is why they picked 14 days, right? Because it takes a certain amount of time for this thing to really incubate and for you to potentially start showing symptoms. Because remember, there are a lot of people who will test positive for this virus and remain asymptomatic the entire time. So they will never show any symptoms of having it. So you go into quarantine for the 14 days. During that 14 days, the virus is building up in your system. You're getting the droplets now that are shedding in your environment. And when they test you at day 14, after having been in isolation, so if you're, this is the importance of isolation, folks. If you are in isolation, where would you have picked it up from? You could have only picked it up before you went into isolation, right? So that is why it's critical for people to respect the isolation procedures. You go into isolation and you stay in isolation. And during that time, you can't have people coming into your house, as I was just saying. You cannot expose other people. And in my mind, this remains the weakest link. What about practical things like food, grocery shopping? So home delivery services, as well as the pizza delivery man and all these places, they can't be notified. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, because if you are in the delivery business, so our friends over at Domino's Pizza, Let's Eat, all these delivery companies, with self-quarantining, because of privacy reasons, it's not that they can stick a sticker in the yard to say, oh, this person is self-quarantining, be cautious when you deal with them. They won't be able to do that. So the government will be putting an advisory out there for anyone in the home delivery business or even home cleaning services, because I can see it now, I can imagine. Ring, ring. Hello? Oh, yes, this is Mr. Smith, and I'd like to have you come and clean the house. I can't leave for the next couple of weeks. Oh, no problem, Mr. Smith. We'll be there on Monday at 1 o'clock. Is that okay with you? Oh, yes, love. That's perfect. Right? Okay, good. Appointment made. Monday at 1 o'clock, I show up in Mr. Smith's house and I'm cleaning his house. I'm doing the most. I'm doing all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I see Mr. Smith with a wristband on. There may be people who are not watching the Cold Hard Truth who haven't seen what this wristband looks like. Let me show it to you again. And so they don't even know. And here they are in the house with someone, cleaning their house, delivering groceries, delivering food to their front door, touching them, touching money that they've handed to them, and all these other things that make it very high risk for them. You see the problem, folks? You see why I remain concerned about what's going on here? And because of data protection and privacy reasons, government cannot tell you that this person is self-quarantining. So they will make a general announcement to say, just be careful and take all precautions with everyone. So assume that everyone is in self-quarantine. Now, you know that ain't gonna happen, folks. That means that the drivers have to go back to wearing masks and sanitizing everything, and we shall see. Malita, good morning. Jake, it depends on how these family and friends are going to be able to quarantine, because they cannot quarantine with you unless you are willing to quarantine for 14 days. So if family or friends are coming to stay with you and you don't have the capacity yourself to stay indoors with them, because you're going to now get a wristband as well. That's how this is going to work. Every member of your household, for people who are already here, if you're going into a household of people here, have to get that wristband. So when they fill out the questionnaire, where you're going to be staying, who you're visiting, who you're staying with, all of these things, I can assure you that those are the types of probative questions that they will be asking. Buenos días, ¿cómo estás, Elizabeth? Estoy muy bien, gracias. Lovita, she's a Caymanian who wants to come and visit her mother, but she has a child that's an American citizen. Okay, I don't think that matters per se. I mean, your child would be able to get the right to come in and visit. The questions that they're going to really be asking of you is, where will you be staying? I don't know how old your mama is, but she's probably in the higher risk category because she's older. So that being the case, where will you be staying with your daughter? That's the better question that you need to be asking yourself. You will not be able to stay with your mom because she's going to be considered high risk. So I doubt that they would permit people to come in and go into an environment with elderly people, because again, that creates a degree of risk for that person. So Lillian, thanks for responding to Lovita. Like I said, it becomes a question, Lillian, of where you're going to be staying. So in other words, you have to make an application, which I suspect will be available here shortly. And there are going to be a number of questions that they're asking you on the application form. Now, going back to Wayne's question, they will be testing people at the airport, but they're still not going to allow you to just walk around freely. So all persons entering the Cayman Islands will be tested at the airport and will be taken by approved transport from the airport to begin their quarantine period, either at a residential accommodation or in the government facility. That test they'll know in 24 to 72 hours. However, the quarantine procedure, sorry, my nose is getting congested again, remains at 14 days. So you do get tested. Yes, Janelle, it's just crazy all over the world. Okay, give me 1 quick second here. Let's throw up a commercial. Folks, are you overpaying for TV? You need not be. We'll be right back after these messages. Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know. It's always whenever I do the show in the morning, my sinuses sometimes get irritated. And can I tell you something? The second the show is over, I don't know, because I'm talking a lot, I'm kind of like moving my sinuses or whatever, irrigating them. But the second the show is over, whatever this is just stops. It's like the weirdest thing. I know that there has to be a logical, scientific explanation for that. All right. So, there's a new feature here actually where I can put up my avatar. Let me see how this works. I can do an avatar without me actually, I don't know how to do it quite yet. Audio avatars. Where you can just do like audio alone and not actually show up in the thing. So I need to figure out how to do that. But then I think it's rude to hear people blowing their noses. But I think you just heard it because I didn't actually mute my mic. All right, let's see what other questions you've got. Let me see here. Cecile, good morning. Cecile's in the UK. Kizzy said, let her get her coffee. You go, girl. Odette, Violet, Evelyn, Roger says, if I'm quarantined at home, my entire family living there should be quarantined. Yes, they will be. And that is the point. Absolutely. I know some of these messages were earlier. My apologies. We have a lot of messages that I've missed. Good morning, Sue. Renika is already overwhelmed by all of this. Good morning, Cassidy. Thank you for tuning in. So Sue wants to know, so there's a question about privilege. So she's saying that basically she knows a couple who have property here and business to all booked for the 15th for the BA flight. And yet a Caymanian family who's expecting the first grandbabies in November, it's totally different for them to be able to come here. Now, very upset unless they go into quarantine as well. Sue, unfortunately, this is one of the things that happens. I mean, yes, there is a disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And there are times when it becomes very, very obvious that the disparity exists in this world. And it is a time like this. The ability to self-quarantine will only work if you have a certain type of facility. Does that seem unfair in some way? Yes. However, for the safety of everyone concerned, what else can the government do? The government has to insist on certain requirements for the type of place, the type of structure. Again, if you're coming into a household, that same grandmother that wants to see her grandbabies, I'm pretty sure she does not want to see them at the risk of catching the coronavirus and either dying herself or having that same grandbaby die, because hello, babies have very limited immune systems and they are very susceptible to catching things like the coronavirus. Jake is at the gym and he said he almost dropped his Weights, Jake, do not drop the weights because we will take no responsibility for that. Kizzy, they were referring to the story about the man who was getting it on and the alerts were going through to the girlfriend's phone. Ding, ding, ding. All of 3 minutes, his heart rate has just went through the roof. And she was like, I wonder what he's doing that time of night. Christine, good morning. Rosanna, what about midnights? I'm not sure if they're going to be a 24/7 watch for people in and out. Well, they're going to do random watch. And listen, I think if they have concerns about an individual not adhering to the requirements, they will simply not approve you for self-quarantine and tell you that you have to go into the government facility. So that's going to be a judgment call. I received a report a couple weeks ago about a family that was supposedly allowed to self-quarantine. The husband is a local physician. When I say local, he works in the Cayman Islands. And the wife and kids were outside. She was allowing the kids to go outside in the street and play. So the other question I had was from the perspective of the geofencing. How specific exactly is this geofencing? And then this brings in another question that we were asked from a guy who said, listen, I have a dog that I want to bring back with me. Will this geofencing allow me to go out in the yard and walk my dog? Those are questions that we don't know the answers to yet. Now, geofencing, in my mind, can be somewhat specific, but I don't know enough about this iSmart technology to know exactly how that works. So let me just be clear. I was telling you guys a little bit about this company. They were purchased by a Canadian company that's listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange called the BCX on March 13th. They were purchased and it's called Blockchain Holdings Limited. It's a publicly traded Canadian company. And so they announced on March 13th that it would be acquiring the rights and interests of this self-monitoring technology suite, collectively called IM Safe, from a company called Wisilica Inc. So the company has been sold, and I imagine there's a lot of questions that probably people have about how this technology works. So you see the little barcode that's on it? Let me just go back. When you get it, you have to scan, and I'm assuming that at the airport, government will help people with this because there are people who have smartphones and the phones are smarter than them, which means that they just don't know how to use the technology. So they will scan this or help you scan it. And then, that's how you scan the QR code on the wristband, do all the connectivity with the Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff. But that has to be done, or the geofencing, like locking you into your location, has to be done when you arrive at your location. So the process of going through and, this process, it's going to take some time. So Renika says, why doesn't government rent a hotel room, put everyone there, and the people can pay for their packages instead of all this? She thinks that this is making things hard on people. Well, Renika, believe it or not, it's the people who want this. They want people to be able, or they are asking the government to allow them to self-quarantine, and then they will adhere to all of this. You will still have a choice. So if you say to government, oh my God, this is too much, I can't do all of this, they will still put you up in the hotel. Might be at your expense, but the point is, Renika, government, my sinuses again. Government has been doing that. That's what they've been doing all this time. Government has been footing the bill for any Caymanians that have returned, Caymanian status holders, and initially everyone that was being put in the quarantine facility. It has been, at this point, thousands of people. Ronika, government does not have a bottomless pit of money. When the government runs out of money between business stipends, covering costs for people at the hotel, the stipends for the people at, what do you call it? The tourism displaced workers. When government runs out of money, where do you think they're getting it from? Me and you by way of taxation. So don't be so quick to tell government to pay for everything, because they'll pay for it. But at some point, you have got to pay the piper. So do you want to pay taxes after all this is over? Because government can no longer afford to pay its bills? Nothing is free, folks. There is no such thing as a free meal. Rosanna, pregnant women are more at risk than anybody else. So if someone is returning to a home with a pregnant person in the home, and government will know this when they do their pre-inspections, I would say that the government will refuse to allow that person to quarantine with a pregnant person. And there's a lot of good logistical reasons why that wouldn't be allowed. Here's a good example. What if a pregnant person, obviously a woman, has a medical emergency during this self-quarantine and she needs to go to the hospital? So there's always the possibility, especially if she's a bit later on, but at any point in a pregnancy, that she will not be able to stay at that home quarantine facility. Folks, give me one more second here. My sinuses are just off the chain. Why don't we have a look at some beautiful Popeye's chicken while I take a quick break? And I hear Coco scratching at my door, so allow me to let her in as how you pronounce it, regarding the cost of the isolation facility. So we had actually done an article on this some months back. Let me just try to remember. It was 2000. Yes, here we go. Back in May, we provided this information. So 2 weeks at the government quarantine facility is going to run you about $2,600. And there've been some additional, I'll put the that post in the link so you can refer back to that. There are some additional facilities I think that you can now go to as well that are probably going to be more expensive than that. Because I think the Ritz and some other places will you know, allow you to quarantine at their facility, but it comes at a greater premium price. So JD, how do you decide what is newsworthy for Mall Road? I'm not sure this is related to the quarantine situation. However, what is newsworthy Well, sometimes we don't even think something is newsworthy, but if people bring it to us, and we are a community paper in the sense that we are more concerned. You guys see Coco in the background. What is she doing? We are more concerned about bringing community issues to the forefront. So it's not always like it's news. Put it this way. The other day, we put up a post about lobster pot because we had multiple people sending us that ad saying $1,000. Is this right? And we're like, hmm. Now, we have always had an issue in this country with misleading adverts. That's one of the reasons why government has set up this whole job Cayman thing and why they have compliance officers within the works agency to review ads. That's what they're supposed to be doing to make sure that people are not trying to cheat the system, finagle the system, and the whole 9 yards. But it still happens every single day. And so people sent this main concern. We put it up on our page as a point of discussion. Other persons then informed us that it was actually $1,000 a week. Now, why that was not in the Compass ad, only God knows. Because by law, you're supposed to stipulate the salary properly, which includes obviously the pay period. So they didn't put up that it was a week or a month or a year or anything. People were looking at it because most managers are paid on a monthly basis. And so people were assuming that it was a monthly salary. So that went up on CMR, not because it's a news story or it's newsworthy, but it is an issue that people in the community wanted to bring to the forefront that they were questioning and concerned about. So Cassidy says you can stay at the Beat Suites for $5,250. Say what? Mm. So the price has doubled and gone up. Lord have mercy. All right. $10,000 fine. Good. Let's talk about this. This is a good point. I'm going to just come out of the you can go to Miami. However, just make sure you know the procedures for re-entry because that's where it changes, right? Thank you, Cassidy, for reminding us of that. Yes. So Sue, unfortunately, I think people still need to be sensible and think about what is in the best interest of their family members and themselves when making these sorts of decisions about their movements. Right? Okay. Kemoya, good morning. How are you? Oh, that's the home quarantine cost? I wonder where they got that figure from. Kimora, are you saying that that's the cost for home quarantine? Or, I mean, there's going to be the cost for home quarantining. I'm assuming that they're going to make you pay for the bracelet, which that's probably $150, $200. I don't know what else you have in place. There will be a cost to the government. Without a doubt. But in terms of a cost to you, well, you just got to make sure you got food and all of the necessities, because you can't jump out and go to the grocery store. And I'm not saying that you may not be able to get a delivery service out, but again, you want to be very, very cautious. And I think anyone who owns a delivery business needs to understand the level of risk that they are taking on as well. Let me just see if there's anything else worth noting. So if you're interested in traveling outbound, you can call Cayman Airways directly, 949-2311. You can also purchase online, CaymanAirways.com. Now, Cayman Airways announced additional repatriation flights. We posted this last night, so let me just get you some information here. Added flights to Miami and Jamaica. So if you are interested in going to Miami or Jamaica and your only option is Cayman Airways, they've added one additional expatriation flight and 3 for September and 3 extra repatriation flights to Miami in October. So always keep an eye on the page, because we tend to put this information up at our Facebook page or the website. So October the 24th, which is next week, Thursday, there is an additional flight to Jamaica at 10 a.m. and arrives in Kingston at 11:05. To Miami, the dates for October are the 1st, the 9th, and the 16th. So I suppose, Jake, if you could get a month vacation, right, from your place of employment, and you went to Miami for like a week or two, and you were willing to quarantine for the 14 days, that might kind of work out, except if you come down with COVID, then you're going to be out for an additional amount of time. And I suppose you could, in theory, work remotely from home. So there is that. Please do not forget that the tourism stipend has been extended to December. So if you are a displaced worker in the tourism industry, so in other words, you worked at one of the hotels, whatever, tourism related, and you no longer have a job and you missed out on the first batch of payments because they've already done 3 months, $1,000 a month, every little bit helps. They've reopened the application process. I don't know when it closes, but I would suggest you get on it. It literally just reopened this Monday. And so you are able now to reapply for a further 3 months. So even if you didn't apply initially, you missed the deadline, this is now your opportunity to get in on this.
Motion detected at the office.
So go to the tourism website. We did an article on this, and the link was in the website. In the website, and apply. And they will, there's certain documents and so on that they require. So you can get moving in terms of applying for that. All right. Any other questions? Let me see here. All right. Rosanna says, who will be the one to buy the groceries before you arrive? Well, I don't know. These are the types of things that you've got to be able to tell the people, government, how you plan on doing that. Who has access to your house to get you groceries before your arrival? These are the logistical things why you got to really think about it. So Sue says, I'm sure there'll be a few here who are going to go to Miami for Christmas shopping and take 2 weeks at home when they come back. Well, as long as they can do that safely, in theory, there is nothing wrong with that. So Anne says you need to get a test before you leave Miami, and it's very hard to get tests in the US. No, they're actually going to be testing you at the airport and here in the Cayman Islands, not on the Miami side. And they'll test you at arrival at the airport, 24 to 72 hours for test results. And supposedly we still have a lot of test kits. Yep. Well, unfortunately, Sue, you're absolutely right. These are the privileges that money can buy. So no, Cassidy, the testing will actually happen here at the Orin Roberts Airport upon your arrival. So our local facility will be conducting the testing. So folks, if you're just joining us, we don't have much time left, but we're taking your questions today. It's a Seek Out Sandy segment. We are taking your questions in relation to the reopening of our borders. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for joining us. Let me see here. All right. You're most welcome, my dear. Now, DOT needs your help, folks. There has been an urgent request. We posted it last night on our Facebook page for experienced divers. And since nobody's working right now in tourism or the dive industry, I would think that a lot of you would be available for this. So I'm actually going to put this up on the website because this is a call to action. There is a serious issue with the coral reefs having sand covering live coral right by Eden Rock. And they say this is because of some issue with a boat or something, which is a bit strange, but following a recent tug and ship encounter, so I don't even know what that means, in Georgetown Harbor, much of the shore reef by Eden Rock has large amounts of freshly deposited and sand covering live coral. And the problem with this, folks, is it will kill the coral. So they're asking for experienced divers to please contact the Department of Environment. They are going out there today, and I'm sure it's going to probably take longer than a day, to try to manually remove the sand off of the coral without damaging the coral, obviously. But if they do not remove the sand, the coral will die. So this is where us as human beings, we are messing up the environment, folks. So please, if you are an experienced diver, you can reach out to them. They were also asking for volunteers in the sister islands. They were also monitoring the threat of stony coral tissue loss disease. Our coral reefs are under immense pressure. And of course, we will lose so much of our ocean life because there are different forms of ocean life, fish, whatever, that live in those coral reefs. And we will lose those species. And we will lose a lot more, including our tourism industry, because what are people going to be diving looking at if the beautiful coral are dead and gone? So please, if you're an experienced diver, reach out to them. And they're also hiring, by the way. DOT is recruiting a conservation officer for the sister islands. The job deadline is the 20th of September. So if you know of anyone who has experience in enforcement, excellent boat handling skills, calm demeanor in confrontations, mature judgment and impartiality, knowledge of local waters, by all means, have them apply. Yes, Morna, it's definitely going to be some interesting times ahead. And everyone has to be compliant and do their part. All right. So let me see here. So couple things. Let me see. So over the weekend, COVID looks like it took the life of a Jamaican legend. We did a story on this. Let me just get his proper name. Give me 1 second here. I think it's Toots. Hold on 1 second. So he is the person, he was 70 years old, I believe. And he is single-handedly responsible, they say, for coining the word reggae. Pretty interesting, right? So he actually did a song, he had it spelled differently, with the word reggae in it. And then it came to be that actually was coined as a form of music. So legendary reggae artist Toots Hibbert dies after coronavirus infection. He was 77, my apologies, and he had just tested positive for the coronavirus. And he was at the hospital there in the University Hospital of the West Indies in St. Andrew. And he passed away on Friday after being hospitalized for more than a week. So he was the frontman for a reggae and ska band called Toots and the Maytals from the early 1960s. And he is credited with popularizing the reggae music genre and even giving it its name with his 1968 single called Do the Reggae. And he spelled it Reggay instead of AE. And that was the first song ever to use that term. Now, isn't it interesting? They've changed the spelling on it. Maybe they didn't like it because it ended in GAY. I'm just saying. So they changed the Y to an E. He had other popular songs like Pressure Drop, Sweet and Dandy, and 5446, that's my number. I have to admit, I've never heard of any of those songs, but of course, this is a little bit before my time. So his death comes just weeks before the release of Got to Be Tough, which is going to be the band's first full-length album in more than a decade. And he is described as the world's greatest living reggae singer in a Rolling Stone profile that they did on him last month. And he has been compared to, his vocal style has been compared to Otis Redding, who's also an amazing artist and singer. He sung things like Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, which most of us have heard before. So rest in peace to Mr. Toots. His real name was Frederick Nathaniel Toots Hibbert, 77 years old, another victim of the coronavirus. All right, folks, any final questions about how this process will work? And if we don't have any questions, Cassidy says, I feel sad when I heard the news. Condolences to the family and the music fraternity. Yeah. I mean, listen, 77 in this day and age is still relatively young. I mean, life has no guarantees, obviously. Yesterday, a 38-year-old man just dropped down and died of a massive heart attack. It's crazy. So you wake up every morning, you have to be prepared to give thanks. You never know when your number is going to be called. But There are people like we saw yesterday with Miss Thelma. Oh my gosh, let me share some pictures. Hold on. Oh, I have not even shared any pictures of Miss Thelma. I hope you guys go and watch the video. There's a few pictures of her here with the governor. We're going to do a story with her later on as well. But Miss Thelma looks so good. She is 100 years old. So at 77, he could have easily lived another 10 years, 20 years. Yeah, he could have made it to 87, 97 or beyond. So unfortunately, COVID is nothing to joke with. No one really has any immunity against this disease. And so that is where you've got to be extra, extra careful. All right. Let's see if I can put this picture of her. So she looks wonderful. 100 years old, folks. Amazing. Let me see here. We took lots of pictures. She had a little bite to eat. Some good jokes and discussions, which she was very much involved in. So we'd like to, her birthday was September the 3rd. So again, we'd like to wish Miss Thelma a wonderful 100th birthday. All right, so there was an announcement that the I'm just trying to see if I can get these photos here. That the government will be removing derelict vehicles, which, my gosh, there are so many of them all over the island. And we really beg people to try to do a better job with your derelict vehicles. Why are they all over our beautiful island, making us look like we're a bunch of ragamuffins? I have no idea. Yes, she looks wonderful for her age. There she is. And not only does she look wonderful, I can assure you folks that she is in very fine spirit. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Seek Out Sandy. Hopefully you got most of your questions answered regarding the reopening process. We will continue to monitor it. Anything new that comes up, maybe next week we'll do another Seek Out Sandy segment. Don't forget that tomorrow is Tech Thursday. So make sure you tune in for that and be safe. Get out there, get lots of work done, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.